Welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. I'm Mary Crafts, and I get to be with you today to bring to you something else that's kind of a little new and a little different. I've been doing lots of different things. Like a couple weeks ago, I had a financial guy on. I've never done that before. And today with me, I have Nate Jones. Nate, thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
So, Nate, most people would wonder why you were going to be on my podcast about crafting a meaningful life because they know you in the context of being a CEO of a major company here in Utah. They don't know you necessarily in the context of how that you have walked a path of overcoming your own fears and how that courage then led you in a different direction in your own personal life. So I want to go back and let's start with, so my listeners know a little bit of your background. Let's tell us about you and about your company, and so they have some context about how fabulous you are.
Well, I don't know that I would say that I'm fabulous.
I say that.
Okay. But so I started Xlear, and it's spelled Xlear. I started it in 2000. Before that, I worked as a commercial diver. I did like underwater welding out on the oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. I've been
Wow.
diving and welding inside of nuclear power plants in Pennsylvania. I've done diving jobs in Lake Powell. I've done some in Lake Tahoe.
Okay.
I've done all kinds of stuff.
Well,
Um,
when I do diving, I have to take every piece of courage with me to go down. And I can't imagine going down with a torch and then I'm going to weld something under. That would be so far out of my comfort zone, I can't even tell you.
it's easy. It's nothing. But anyways, and then I quit that to start this company. I started this company based on a product that my dad, who was a physician, had developed and was actually just using in his practice. And
Ah,
I learned what it did, and I said, "Hey, why don't you start a business selling it?" And at this point, he was 63. He had just gotten divorced from my mom, and he said, "Well, I'm 63. I don't want to risk my retirement to start a new business." And I just said, "Well, what about me?" And I'd been saving up money to start a diving business here in Utah. And so I came back to Utah in 1999, and I had a friend that actually helped put up money, and we started the company with about 40,000 bucks, and that's all that we've ever invested into it. And here we are today. But
wow.
what it is, the product that we started with was actually a nasal spray. Again, by the way, I should actually clarify that. The products that we sell are hygiene products, oral hygiene and nasal hygiene. And everybody understands oral hygiene, brush your teeth, use a mouthwash, but not a lot of people really understand nasal hygiene. And some
Yes.
people understand it as using a saline, maybe a saline spray or a saline irrigation, but that's kind of like, using water to brush your teeth or using water to wash your hands.
Ah, okay.
And what my dad had come up with is he had read these studies about the sugar compound, xylitol, that was blocking the ability of bacteria to adhere to tissue. And
Wow.
they've been using
Okay.
xylitol in oral hygiene products for almost 50 years now because they had studies going back to 1969 where they showed that xylitol made it so that kids did not get cavities. And I'll give you the 1 minute spiel on that. But it works differently from fluoride because a lot of dentists will come and say, well, we have fluoride. We don't need anything else. Fluoride, fluoride, fluoride. But fluoride, all fluoride does is it helps remineralize the enamel of your teeth. It doesn't do anything for the bacterial infection that is causing tooth decay. And what xylitol does is it addresses the bacterial infection. It gets rid of the strep mutans that are creating the acid that cause the tooth decay.
And
And
there are a lot of side effects to fluoride. You know,
yes, I know. That's a whole other
I know
argument.
you know.
But, the analogy that I use is if you're only going to use fluoride, then the next time your house catches on fire, don't call the fireman, call the carpenter. Because using fluoride to treat tooth decay is kind of like using a carpenter. Just go, hey, my house is on fire. Can you go back in and rebuild it while it's still on fire? What xylitol does is it puts the fire out. It gets rid of the infection of the infectious bacteria. And we've
Wow.
got 50 years worth of data showing that. We have data out the wazoo showing that. I mean, thousands of studies. I mean, they have studies showing that if parents use xylitol, their kids don't get cavities. Okay? Because if we don't have it to give to our kids don't get that karyogenic bacteria. We know that strep mutans is a vertically transmitted disease, infection. We get it from our parents, we give it to our kids. If we
All right.
stop that cycle, your
So
kids don't get cavities.
I was having you on the podcast to talk about something completely different, Nate, but now you've really perked my. I drive out down I-15 nearly every day, and I see your building there. And always I want to say Xlear, but I know it's clear because I've been to enough corporate alliance meetings with you that I absolutely knew what it was called. But I didn't ever really know what you did. And that is super interesting. This sounds like something that would, even me at my age, at 70, that I would benefit from as I age. Is that something that's helping not just?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
But
what would
that's
be
a whole
some?
other topic. We're just talking about business and overcoming fears here. I'm just giving you the 3 minute version of the 3 minute story of what the company is and what we do.
This is a total interest for me, though. So I'm going to ask the question: where do I buy the product? Is it available online, or is it a? Do I
Well,
sign? How do you get the product?
of course, all of our products are available online. They're available on Amazon and all these other retail outlets. You can buy them from our website. The Spry product line, which is our oral care, toothpaste, mouthwash, chewing gum, mints, stuff like that. Those you find at any natural products retailer.
Okay, okay,
And then the Xlear, the nasal hygiene products, you can buy those everywhere. I mean, that's in CVS, Walgreens, Target, Walmart, your natural retailers. It's in your grocery stores. It's at Smith's. It's at Harmon's. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, you can go into pharmacies in Dubai and pick that up. You can go
wow.
into places in South Africa and pick it up.
And I
And
know
it's
I'm
all made right
diverting
here in
here.
American Fork.
Right? But I know I'm diverting here, but I'm thinking, as I age and I have every single tooth in my mouth is crowned. And so I have a great smile. But the problem with that as I age then is that, what happens to all that crown work, and what about the bacteria in there, and keeping it clean, and I water pick, and I sonicare, and I mouthwash with Act. But it sounds like this is something that I could add to my regime that's really going to, because healthcare as people age is a huge problem in senior citizens.
It is. It is. And we could, I guess, divert the conversation and I could talk about that. But so let me explain that, because one of the things that xylitol does as we age, a lot of people get dry mouth, especially if
Uh-huh.
they're taking medications of almost any sort.
Right.
And xylitol, almost all of your dry mouth products use xylitol. It's very hydrophilic. It pulls moisture toward it. And that's one of the reasons why it works so well in a nasal spray, but it also works very well in your mouth to do that. The other thing is, again, as you get older, people's mouths naturally get drier.
Right.
That is actually makes it more receptive to the strep mutans bacteria that create acid.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so if you're using xylitol, and the other part of it is, you just brought up a brand called Act. Okay, if you're using a mouthwash that advertises and says we kill 99% of the bacteria, that is a horrible, horrible product to be using. And I'll tell you what.
Okay.
Because
Thank you for telling me.
even people that have really bad caries, that have lots of cavities, only about 15% of the bacteria in your mouth are bad. You have
Ah.
a whole bunch of bacteria in your mouth that are commensals, and what that means is they help us digest our food. The bacteria
True.
that help us digest gluten, the bacteria that help us digest milk, and a variety of other things live in our mouth. Lactobacillus helps us digest milk. Okay? If we kill those bacteria off repeatedly,
Ah.
what do we expect to see happening in our society?
I am now getting lactose intolerant, and I
We'll
never
stop using
connected.
Act.
I never connected the two.
Most dentists don't either.
Okay, that's true. Because
Okay.
my dentist told me to start using ACT.
Okay. And then see, that is a problem is that dentists are not taught to look at the microbiome of your mouth, just like doctors are not taught to look at the microbiome in your gut.
And
If
it's
you have
such
a
a
good doctor
thing.
or a dentist, a good physician or a good dentist, because they're both doctors, that understands that, they learn that after they went to medical school or dental school. They didn't learn that in dental school or medical school.
Wow.
But your oral microbiome and your nasal microbiome are what dictate the health of your gut microbiome.
I never put that together. The whole world now is focusing on your gut health. And we've heard that the leaky gut forever now. And how is your microbiome and all your probiotics and your this and that and kombucha and I drink that every day and blah blah blah. I never connected the health of my gut with the health of my mic. I didn't even know I had a microbiome in my mouth and nasal. This is huge information for me. Thank you. You may have just extended my life 20 years.
Well, I don't know that you're going to live to be 120 just because I told you that, but
Well, I am going to live to be 105. So I've been putting that out since I was 50. I changed my projection of what the rest of my life looked like. But in doing
I'm
that,
planning
I
on living to
want to,
110 myself.
well, see, I'm glad someone's going to be around for my funeral. This really is great information, and I'm absolutely going to go to your website. It's Xlear. So
Correct.
X takes the place, and that's why it sounds clear.
Where that comes from is my dad chose the name, and it comes because he was using it to clear the nose, and he just used the X from the xylitol.
Oh, so xylitol clear. I love that. I love that. Okay, so let's talk now that I am completely informed and going to go right on your website. I'm going to buy this product today. I can tell you I am. I'm not going to put any more ACT in my mouth. Done. Okay, there we go. So all of that quest to bring this to the world has not been easy for you because there's a lot of backlash against natural products from the government, from big pharma. And Nate, you've had to become yourself, your own champion. You had to believe in what you were doing. And I think that you have a story about how facing your own fears has led you to this best version of yourself now. And everyone on this podcast will tell you, they will absolutely tell you without any doubt what my mission is or what my purpose is in life. And my purpose in life is to be the very best version of me that I can every single day. And in doing that, the natural outgrowth is that I want that for others as well. It's not something you want to keep to yourself. You want everyone to be their very best version of themselves. So I want to hear your story of how you faced fears to become, we're all still in the process. It's not a destination. That you have become and are on the path of being the very best version possible of yourself.
Well, I have a history of whenever I know that I have a fear, I will do whatever I can to face it. I mean, I used to be scared of heights. I still am. But when I joined the Army, I specifically requested that I go into an airborne unit so I could jump out of airplanes. And I
Wow.
jumped out of helicopters. I rappelled down from helicopters. And you learn to control those fears. You learn to not allow the fear to control you. I was claustrophobic. Can you find me a job, that would be more claustrophobic than working at the bottom of the ocean?
Yeah, then diving. That's absolutely right.
And so I've always had a history of addressing if there's something that I'm afraid of, you just address it. You just go and make sure that I'm trying to think of how to describe it. You understand the fear and you understand the danger, but you address it to the best of your ability so that your fear doesn't dominate you. Your fear shouldn't control you. You should control your fear.
I think that's one of the biggest, if not the biggest challenge that we face as humans, is on a daily basis and in our whole life process of overcoming our fears that are inside of us. When we, like you, can get control of them and move past them and move through them, we become transformed people. I think for 50 years of my life, Nate, and I think, when we first connected at Corporate Alliance, I think Corporate Alliance is where we connected.
I think the first time we connected was you catered our wedding.
Oh, okay, there you go. Okay.
15 years ago. And then after
Okay.
that, we were on board at UVU together.
Yes, we were. Yes, we were. I loved that board. That was such an amazing board, and so many amazing people on that board. And to be able to serve alongside you, I really got a glimpse of the powerhouse entrepreneur that you are. And I knew that there had to be something that was, whenever you have someone that is visionary, they have walked through something in their life.
I'm not really a visionary. I just surround myself with visionaries.
I don't believe that, Nate. You are a visionary. You truly are. I listened to you. I watched you when we were on the board and talking about different things. And there was never a sense in you of fear. And so that's interesting to me that you had walked through that process. So to the person who is still caught up and feel like their life is being controlled by their fears, and they hear you and they say, well, he must have been brought up different than me, or he has different fears than I do because I can't just walk through them. What do you say to them?
I think that you can always walk through your fears. I think you should always address your fears, and it just takes courage to do it. And I don't know that I have any more courage or ability to address my fears. It's just I don't know. I've always done it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm afraid of deep water. I go to the
Jumped
ocean all
in.
the time.
Yeah. I think that's a little bit like me when I decided that I was going to become a climber. And Martin Fry inspired me, and he said, you can climb Kilimanjaro, even in your 60s, Mary. Even though I had never climbed a mountain, I was with you afraid of heights. And for my entire life, I told myself, you can't do things physically. You can't accomplish anything physically.
So when are you going up Everest?
Well, I'm not sure Everest is in the plan, but I'm definitely going to climb another mountain.
But
I
you did
love
do
climbing.
Kilimanjaro.
I did. At age 66. So people said, well, what are you waiting for, Mary? Well, you know what I'm waiting for, Nate? I'm waiting for my fear to go away of taking a bigger one. And so,
You should never wait. I have this
it's
discussion
not going to get easier.
I have this discussion with my team a lot. And especially in business and even in life in general. I think people always wait because they want everything to be ready. And I
Yeah,
tell people, as soon as you're 75% ready, get going because you're never 100% ready. You're never
never.
100% ready to have a kid. You're never 100% ready to get married. You're never 100% ready to start a business. You're never 100% ready to do anything. So as soon as you think you're three-quarters of the way there, go for it. Get going.
I think that applies to me, like in climbing Kilimanjaro. I thought I was ready, but when I got there and the guides looked over my equipment, they went over my training schedule with me, I realized I was only about 70% ready. But the next day was
Close
go.
enough.
The next day was go. There was no going back and coming back later. It was go. And I think you'll agree with me on this, that the lessons throughout my life that I had learned on resilience of being able to get back up. You know, when you make a misstep or you fall down and you feel too tired or you just doubt your own abilities to come back and get up again and get going. That kind of grit, those lessons of grit that I'd learned through my life, they were with me every day on Kilimanjaro.
Well, that's when you need them.
It is when you need them. It is. And this is like everything for me physically had always been a challenge, like learning to scuba dive. I had no intention. I'm afraid of the water. I don't swim.
How old were you when you learned to scuba dive?
Let's see. I was 48.
See, I was 21, 22, 22.
Yeah, fearless.
But no, my children, who are 11 and 13, they're both dive certified. And
Yeah.
they've been diving in the Caribbean. They've been diving in Thailand. They've been diving, you know.
Yeah. Well, once I overcame that fear of putting your nose under the waterline and taking a breath. That was my biggest fear, obviously, of drowning. And once I overcame that, I realized I could do this. And like you, it's scuba diving around the world. I've been to Tonga, the Great Barrier Reef, the Caribbean, I mean, lots of different places. But still, there's that moment of push for me. That moment when I get in the water, you've gone over backwards, you're in the water, you come up, and you start to release the pressure. And when that water comes up over my mask, I really think this is the end for me. Are you ready to say goodbye to life? But what happens?
Only if the boat leaves you.
Yeah, have a good dive master. But you push through. There's something about changes inside of us, Nate, when we actually then go down and let the water out and just tell myself, keep breathing slow and deep, slow and deep. And that was the same message on Kilimanjaro. Poli poli, steady and slow, steady and slow. And
don't panic.
Don't panic. Don't panic. The first time I went over the boat, we were in Cozumel, and my children, who I did this for, were down below me.
The first time you went scuba diving was in Cozumel?
Yeah, yeah.
That's where I went first.
Well, there you
I got
go.
certified in Cozumel.
And my children looked up at me trying to come down, and they remember something the dive master or our dive instructor had said to us as we were getting certified, and that was, if you see someone in the water flailing, you know they're in trouble. And they look up, and here's their mom. What? So they came back up. We all grabbed hands, and we all went down. And there's such value in having a team champions with you when you're overcoming your fears.
Yeah.
You know, Nate, I think that you mentioned not only overcoming your fears, but you talked about courage, and you are now in this wellness field. So I would like to talk for a little bit about how courage helps you on our wellness path. And are we ostriches with our heads in the sand, or do we show courage in facing what's in front of us?
I don't know if this is the place to say it, but I think that as individuals, I think that I think that somewhat we do have our head in the sand, but we're pulling it out. I think our public health agencies, their heads are so far buried in the sand, they're never going to get it. I mean, I'll give you a good example. They did studies in 95, University of Michigan Dental School, where they had kids in schools chew xylitol gum. The kids had practically zero tooth decay after that. For 8 years after the study was over, they had practically zero tooth decay.
Okay.
Because you change the bacteria and you get long-term protection. Okay? Not only that, but they had 42% fewer respiratory infections. It costs $25 a year to provide these kids with gum, and that's what your results are. So for $50 per child, You reduce tooth decay for 8 years, at least, probably more. That's what they measured. And you reduce respiratory infections by 40%. Public health won't implement gum chewing programs in schools. Okay. Here in Utah, during COVID, we threw away out hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gum, almost $1 million worth. I went to the state and I said, hey, we will donate this gum to the schools for free.
Wow.
And the lady that they put in touch with us, the school nurses and the people at the school said, sure, get the state to buy off on it. And the state refused to do it because they didn't want to risk taking money away from the doctors and the dentists that were treating the sick kids. And to
So let's
me,
put it
that's
in
almost a
post
criminal
care,
act.
not preventative care. Yeah.
Correct. They would rather, they don't want to lose the budget. So if, and this is the way state agencies work, government agencies work. When I was in the military, it was the same way. At the end of the year, if you had any ammo left over, you went out and you shot it, because if you don't use it, then they cut your budget the following year.
Yeah.
So if these guys have a budget for, I'm just making up a number, for $1 million to pay doctors and dentists to go look at these kids, and they can go in and treat and use xylitol to stop them from getting sick and getting tooth decay, then their budget is going to get decreased, and they don't want that.
Right.
And I was rather ashamed, but even during COVID, I was sending up studies to Angela Dunn, who was our COVID
Right.
response guru,
Right.
and she refused to discuss it unless the FDA approved it as a drug. And I was sending her data about saline sprays, not our spray, saline sprays. But she didn't have the courage to tell people to use saline sprays, even though the data showed that I sent her
Right.
showed that it worked nearly 100% of the time.
Yeah. So not only courage in taking care of our own personal health, but you've had to show a lot of courage in trying to take care of public health and others and our community around us, that was as important to you as your own personal health. I appreciate that. So
Well, I
thank you.
try. I'm not going to say it works.
Well, the idea of when we begin to overcome our fears, the courage begins to build. And you start with this much courage, and you overcome one fear, and then you have the courage to overcome another fear and another fear. I remember the first time that I ever went on a walk or a hike in our mountains, and people always said to me, let's go hike Timp, let's go hike Stewart Falls, let's go hike, up Payson Canyon. I had so much fear of not being able to do it physically, I never went. The first time I hiked in these beautiful mountains, I was 55. And when I did that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best kept secret in the world. Hiking is just walking outdoors. I didn't know. And so since then, I became this avid hiker. And not only that, then on into being a climber. But that first courage to go with someone and take a hike took a lot. But now, each time, it's easier. I think the repetition makes things a little bit easier for us in finding that courage. What things do you think in your own personal life, Nate, are still in front of you to find that's going to need that courage?
Ooh, I think there's a lot. That I mean, I don't want to get into politics, but I think that our country is going to change a lot in the next 5 years. And I think it's
Yes.
going to take a lot of courage by a lot of people to keep our country from falling apart.
There is
I
that
think
kind
that
of
is,
brink of whatever is next. There's a sense of that. I think no matter what side of the political spectrum that you're on, there is a sense from everyone that what we do now matters more than it ever has.
yeah.
And I can tell you what I think matters and what I think is going to heal our country. and that is this concept of unity and oneness. We cannot function the way we have been, hating each other, pulling each other, pointing fingers, degrading. We have to see each other as connected.
I agree.
And that's the person that preaches that concept, I'm with them. I don't care what
Well,
color they're wearing.
I have a friend of mine. I don't know. Do you know who Peter McCullough is?
No.
He's a doctor, but he actually wrote a book about the courage to face COVID, and he points that out, and that in our society we don't teach people how to have courage. We haven't taught people how to have courage. We haven't taught them about it. We don't. It's not something that we go out and teach to our kids. And when you're running in political office, it's not something that people ask about. Do you have courage? Do you have the courage to do the right thing? Or are you going to topple over when the wind blows?
Wow, I love that concept. I wish that a reporter would ask that now when they are interviewing all these candidates. Tell me about your courage to
Yeah.
stand. And I think we see that I see that all the time in political office where I love an individual and I've been friends with them and they've been people of integrity, and suddenly when they get elected and they head off to Washington D.C., well, what happened to you? Now a lot of people that doesn't happen to. This isn't everything, but it is a question, and that is such a great question. The next time I have one of the candidates in front of me, I'm going to ask them, tell me about your level of courage. I love that question.
I would like to hear their answer.
A lot of people want to come on, and they want to come on and just talk about politics, and this is not a political thing. If they want to come on and talk about the values and principles that they lead in their life, then I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So, but because I want to frame it differently and I'm not going to take any questions that are set questions for them to answer, sometimes their campaign have to give approval. It's not just the candidate
Well,
themselves.
ask them the question, okay, that if somebody comes up with dirt on them from their personal life, are they going to have the courage to push back and say, yes, we all have dirt, or are they going to bend over and do whatever they're told to do? Because I think that's what happens a lot. And if we
I
don't have the
think you're
courage,
right.
we're all imperfect people. None of us are perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's people that talk about this all the time that, people go to Washington. I mean, this goes back to J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, they all know that he had dirt on all the politicians, and the
Yep.
politicians would do what he said because they didn't want
Yep.
that to come out. And people have to have the courage to be able to say, yes, I'm not perfect. I've done things. I've got skeletons in my closet, you know.
Yeah.
So
The fear of what others think, the fear of what would happen to us is not just in the political arena. That fear is with us all the
all the
time.
time.
You see teenagers on social media, their fear of what they look like, or their fear of being judged, or their fear of not being enough. Those are the same fears that as adults that they haven't faced and made a decision about who they are. Those are the same fears that are
Yep.
creating so many problems for us now. They're not any different.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I didn't have social media when I was growing up.
Oh, no kidding. I had enough problems without having that. And my children that have limited that with my grandchildren, I'm so grateful for, and taught true principles to them. I it's it's the most important thing right now, Nate. The health and wellness of my grandchildren, and I'm kind of done influencing my
What about
children.
your
That's
kids? You just
I
you just
don't
forget about your
know.
kids?
No, you don't forget about them, but the amount that I can influence them is pretty small.
My parents, they still have an influence on me. Um, you know, when they, my parents and I are on different sides of the political spectrum, but we have many discussions about it, and they still influence me in a lot of things I do.
I love that. I'm going to remember that. It doesn't keep me from living a life of integrity, thinking that it doesn't matter to my children. But it will be a little bit more important to me to shine that light for them to see. I think that's a great reminder for all of us to shine the light we have.
Yes.
Nate, as you think about, as we're going to wrap up on our podcast, of giving the piece of advice or wisdom, how are you crafting a meaningful life?
I spend a lot of time with my children. I acknowledge that, until they're 18, I have you know, a lot better time to spend with them.
Yeah, yeah.
When I was younger, I come from a family of 14 children. We grew up on a farm up in
Oh my
Idaho,
gosh.
where my dad was a doctor, but we would be out playing all day long, and we had a great time. And I spend a lot of time. I spend more time with my kids than anybody. I'm trying to think than anybody else I know.
Yeah,
So I just spent last week rafting down to Colorado with them. I
I
took them
love
to,
that.
to
Down in Moab.
from Moab. We went in from Moab down through Cataract Canyon down to Lake
Oh
Powell.
wow. Okay, the big ones. That's
I
great.
took them to Dubai and Thailand and Indonesia earlier this year. I've taken, so we go out to the lake. We go boating all the time.
Yeah, it is time. It is about the time you spend. I had plenty of time in my life when I was in the middle of my career and trying to provide food on the table that it wasn't about time. And those times were hard for me as a mom to support my family financially and not be there to support them emotionally. And I'm playing catch up, Nate. I'm trying to spend as much time now as I can with them and with my grandchildren. But there are always choices that we make. And that was one of the big pieces of courage for me to be able to admit that I was not there for them much of the time.
Well,
That took a
I'll
lot of
give you some
courage.
advice. Get a boat.
We had a boat.
Well, then go on the boat. And let me explain my reasoning behind that. Because I've had a boat since I was about 17. My mom and dad, they bought their first boat when I was 17, and I've had one ever since. And a friend of mine actually pointed this out to me. He came boating with his kids on my boat, and then he went and bought a boat. And I said, Pete,
uh,
why you buy a boat? And he goes, Nate, I don't know if you realize this, but a boat is 23 feet long, 15 feet wide, and your kids are begging you to go and spend time on that boat with them.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's not very often that you can find something where your kids want to come with their friends and everybody
yeah.
gets together on a 22-foot by 15-foot boat
Absolutely.
and spend 4 or 5 hours sitting there having a good time, talking and enjoying each other.
And we had the Sea-Doos and the wave runners to go with it, so that you could bring a whole crowd of kids and you could just spend time and enjoy that. Yeah, it's not that I didn't spend time with them. I just was not as much as I look back that I would have wanted, and that's the piece of advice that I always give to people who are in the middle of their careers now. That really decide what is your greatest desire in life and make sure your actions are aligned with that desire. And mine are now aligned, and I'm living the life that I desire.
Well, that's good.
But it took me a while to get there.
I'm living a great life, and there's things that I could do to improve, obviously, but I'm I enjoy it.
And I love that. You're a great dad.
I
And
try.
do you have any grandchildren? Do you have any grandchildren? Yeah.
Oh, my kids are 13
Like,
and 11.
yeah, they're still babies. That's right. That's right. I remember that because you got married 15 years ago. Yes. And I was fourth dedicated to your wedding, so that was
Yes.
awesome. Nate, thank you so much for being with us today. And to all of my listeners, at the end of the podcast, we'll have Nate's website. You can go on and find out more, like I'm going to do this afternoon, about Xlear, and I'm going to improve my nasal and mouth health. And then, of course, to listen to the podcast and share it with your friends about an entrepreneur who seems to have it all together and his path towards being a very fulfilled individual. And that even someone like Nate had fears that he overcame. And that every single day he's standing for courage, not only for himself, but for others and for our country. Thanks for being with us today, Nate. And please, everyone, focus, ponder, think, align to craft your meaningful life. Thank you.
Crafting a meaningful